Hello everyone, this is Dina Astrology, and today we're going to talk about the eclipse that's occurring on December 4th, 2021, a total solar eclipse that's going to be traveling around the coast of Antarctica. This eclipse will be starting about 500 kilometers southeast of the Falkland Islands, between the Falkland Islands and St. George Islands off the coast of Antarctica. According to my calculations, it will begin at 6:40 a.m. in the middle of the ocean, and it will continue all around the whole of the Antarctic continent, going east to west, ending at sunset in the Southern Ocean near New Zealand. Parts of New Zealand and South America will be able to see portions of the eclipse, though the totality will not be visible to them. Though the peak of the eclipse occurs about an hour after the eclipse starts, I've decided to make a chart for the start of the eclipse, when it is born, and the totality path begins. So, using an online tool to discover exactly where the eclipse starts in the ocean, I inputted the longitude and latitude, and I started the eclipse as occurring at 6:40 a.m., 1 hour west of GMT on December 4th, 2021, and 51 west, 22 minutes, and 53 south, 07 minutes. So, when we did this, interestingly, right away, we got a rising sign of Scorpio. So this eclipse is a Scorpio rising, baby. And I immediately noticed as well that the moon is also very close to the horizon. So this eclipse, of course, 6:40 a.m. means that this eclipse starts in the morning. And as it travels west, of course, it will be appearing in the later and later in the day for other places along the Antarctic coast as it goes west. But it starts in the morning, and therefore we have a Scorpio rising chart with the moon, Mercury, and sun with the south node in Scorpio. A Scorpio rising chart puts Aquarius in the 4th house, Taurus in the 7th house, and Leo in the 10th house. The chart ruler for a Scorpio rising chart is Mars. Therefore, we will be looking for the location, degree, and placement of house of Mars for an understanding of what this eclipse really means for the world. Right away, we notice Mars is in the 12th house. So the chart ruler of this chart is in the 12th house, a house of hidden things. The 12th house also rules things like sleep and sex, places of convalescence, confinement, the end of anything, expenditures, foreign residency, imprisonment, hospitals, and spiritual release and death. It rules all losses, as it is a Dushtana house, along with the 6th and the 8th. And thus, being that it rules hospitals and confinement, as well as being a house of loss and possible illness and death, therefore, it can also indicate dangers to health. I think it's interesting right away that therefore this chart ruler Mars is in the 12th house in the middle of a pandemic. To me, this indicates that there will be a potential resurgence of the COVID pandemic, and more people will be hospitalized. Wherever Mars is, it heats things up. It brings attention and it brings activity. So therefore, Mars in the 12th house brings more people to the hospital. Will this really be the case? Not everything in the 12th house is bad. The 12th house can indicate the proper finishes of things, and it can indicate foreign travel in a good way. It can also indicate spiritual enlightenment as well as bringing home foreign or alternative acquisitions to the house. But let's look at the dignity of Mars. Is Mars in a good sign? Mars is in Libra. Libra is a debilitated sign for Mars. So this indicates that the chart ruler Mars is not really in a good place, in a good health. Let's look at the degree of Mars as well. Is it in a strong degree? No, it's actually in a very weak degree. It's at 29 degrees Libra, which means that it is actually Sandhi, which is a form of debilitation, and therefore it indicates that Mars's position in the 12th house is not going to be giving benefits, but is a potential killer. Mars has a special aspects to the 4th and 8th houses from itself. So Mars in the 12th year is looking at the 3rd house, which is ruled by Capricorn. Notice that there is Saturn and Pluto still in Capricorn in the 3rd house here. This indicates that people will still be limited in their movement, possibly because of a resurgence of COVID cases. This also indicates to me in general that all of the larger effects of the pandemic indicated by Pluto and Saturn are still ongoing and will still influence people being sent to or towards Mars, the 12th house. To me, this also indicates that for people who are unwilling to remain at home, they may face hospitalization or sickness if they do not listen to the lessons of Saturn in the 3rd. Saturn in the 3rd also represents a limit of transactions, a limit of petty cash to buy things, a limit of purchasing power for your neighborhood grocery. I think this will indicate people are still being economically affected, especially as well in terms of the logistics or the transfer of goods. Capricorn in the 3rd house, when it is well placed, indicates a person who may be very talented with finances. Capricorn rules the acquisitions of things like gemstones, land, mines, real estate, actual assets. To me, this bad location of Saturn, though, especially with regards to the relationship to the rising, which is Saturn is an enemy to Mars and Scorpio, is that we are still going to be suffering limitations in the acquisitions of things, limitations in the transport of goods, limitations in our communication with each other, as well as our short distance travel to family and friends who live within the countries we reside in. I also think in a larger scale, this may mean also that people's access to information is limited. People are not going to be able to get a clear picture of what's going on very easily in the next month or so, and possibly later. How strong is this prediction in terms of a resurgence in COVID? Well, it's pretty easy to assume that this is going to happen because of the holidays, meaning that people are going to be traveling more. However, it's not just going to be a surge from holidays. I think it may actually be far worse than what people assume. Why? Because this is also seen from a debilitated Venus in the 2nd house. Venus is actually happy in the 2nd house, and therefore it's in its own house. It has a kind of power there. However, it is in a debilitated sign for Venus, which is Sagittarius. When Venus is debilitated in the 2nd house, it can actually cause respiratory infections, because Venus and the 2nd house both rule the lungs and throat. So what is COVID? COVID is a respiratory infection. Since Mars is the 11th house from Venus, people who go out and interact with others are going to be afflicted through Mars to have Venus and a respiratory infection. This, therefore, is showing COVID again. The 11th house is socializing. So, if people don't stay at home with the Venus and they go out to socialize 11th from Venus, they will get sick. Let's look at the good news, though. It's not all bad. Jupiter is in the 4th house and in a sign and place that is friendly to the rising sign. Jupiter is in Aquarius, although it is not exactly exalted for Jupiter. It's better than when it was in Capricorn. And now it has moved out of being at 0 degrees, which it was in the prior week. It is now at 1 degrees Aquarius. So the energy of Jupiter as the great benefactor, the Lord of wisdom, the guru, and the planet that gives us luck, it is now in a way visible to us and existing in a not in a transparent way, but in a real way. The energy is also flowing forward. It's gone from the Sandhi, or the transitional emptiness, into a real position. So, Jupiter in the 4th house here, I think, indicates that the economy will begin to recover. I mean, it is recovering, and it will begin to slowly recover. For those people who are smart with their money and holding position in their homes and in their lives with their finances, will actually make it through. The 4th house is a house that is supportive to the Scorpio rising sign. It is a friendly sign to Scorpio rising. So this house is a benefit, and therefore Jupiter, also a benefactor being there, is a good sign. Let's talk a little bit more about the flavor of this eclipse in terms of the nakshatras. The Lagna is actually Jyestisha nakshatra. Jyestisha is a very active, aggressive sign, and it's ruled by Mercury as well, so it's a great talker. The fact that this eclipse also starts in the morning means that the North Node, or Rahu, is in the 7th house, when the South Node is in the horizon. To me, this indicates, with the Jyestisha rising, that people may be more inclined to be divisive with their speech and their opinions to others. There may be a lot of conflict over politics, over welfare, social issues, and even within the home, over religion. Especially with Mars in the 12th house, this may indicate that some ideas may even be killed. Some political movements, which may have been entertained by many for quite some time, may finally lose all of their followers through some form of obvious or overt behavior. It'll come to the 12th house and die. Basically, things will heat up, and they will reach a point where it will completely deflate. And this is also seen with the fact that Venus in the 2nd house, which rules speech, is Vargotoma, or extra strong, in a debilitated sign of Sagittarius. So it is Sagittarius' sign with Sagittarius' pada. Sagittarius is very ideological, so we may have a lot of ideological speech, which, because of Saturn in the 3rd house, is also being limited, or perhaps the information is actually being controlled or not quite given to us in the full picture on purpose. This actually may backfire for people, and result in people not only becoming more isolated from everyone, but certain movements may actually reach too far and deflate themselves or kill themselves and send themselves to the 12th house to be finished, basically. As the month progresses, the sun will actually eclipse Mercury. Mercury is pretty close to the sun already, only 3 degrees away, but it will be combusted completely by the sun. As the month progresses, also the sun will move towards Venus, combusting it as well. I'm not quite so sure, but this may actually result in more COVID cases, because this will create an even more debilitated Venus, which actually, Venus actually provides longevity and actually provides health when it is in a good location. But when it is combust or when it is debilitated, it can actually indicate sickness. So this is why I think the COVID cases will actually surge for quite a while and may actually increase for all of winter. Rahu is actually exalted right now. Rahu, or the North Node. It's exalted in Kritika Nakshatra, or Taurus, at 6 degrees. It's in the Pada of Pisces, which may actually give it a little bit of a weaker exaltation when it moves backwards from Pisces into Aquarius. Pisces into Aquarius, it will actually have more power. But right now, with Rahu exalted, there are actually a lot of opportunities for people who are looking in the right way. And what I mean by in the right way is that if you are seeing the trouble in your life, the problem in your life, as an actual open door for which you can approach for solutions, this is actually a good thing. People who have mental problems, mental instabilities, this is not a good time for them. This is really for people who have ongoing behavioral issues. This may be a period, particularly in the 6 days surrounding the eclipse, 3 days before and 3 days after. It's going to possibly come to a head for them, because they will be perhaps influenced, kind of like to the point of acting out. Things will come to a head, as it were. There are special aspects with Rahu. They are the 5th from Rahu and the 9th from Rahu. So actually, Rahu is aspecting Saturn, the house of communication, the house of information exchange, the house of short distance travel, logistics, and neighbors, siblings, cousins, and writing and speaking to a certain degree as well. And what this tells me is that for many people, there's going to be a clash of opinions, a clash of a misunderstanding as in communication. And the real important thing is to take a Saturn view regarding this. The key to unlocking the problem is to be cautious, slow, methodical, respectful, traditional, and the opposite of impulsive, quick, angry. You need to be calm. You need to be rational. You need to think and plan your actions if there's any conflict in your life at this point. If you manage to do this and to really take account for who is really on your side or not, for example, just because you disagree with somebody on something doesn't mean that they're your enemy, then you will benefit. Unfortunately, I see in the coming days a large amount of coordinated effort by the media and by politicians to divide people further. This is especially shown with the fact that also Venus is debilitated in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, a very ideological sign, ideological and opinionated. And Saturn, right there, exalted, sitting in the third house, our ability to communicate and connect with our neighbors, especially those closest to us. People in the know are people who are going to be disengaging from these ideological battles, these things that lead us to be mentally unwell, physically unwell, and dividing ourselves against our friends and family. Yes, I forgot to mention, actually, Mars in the 12th can also indicate mental unwellness. It can mean your sleep is disrupted, as 12th house rules the bed area, the part of which you lie down and cease to be conscious. Let's talk a little bit about climate change. I was looking about in this especially because the eclipse happens over Antarctica. I think this is an indication that the themes in this coming year are going to be all related to climate. Right away, seeing that this is a Mars-dominated chart indicates, especially with Scorpio, which rules transformation, means that it's going to be a very disruptive year for the climate. With Mars as the chart ruler, Mars rules hot things. Mars heats things up. Mars causes inflammation and dryness. It is the Pitta planet, Pitta being the hot or warm Ayurveda type. So the fact that this eclipse is happening over Antarctica means that this is going to be unusually warm in Antarctica, and it's going to affect the whole world. This makes further sense given that Saturn and Pluto are both still in Capricorn. Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign, rules famines as well as pandemics and pestilences. Pluto is still at 0 degrees or Sandhi, and it's at actually the Vargotoma Pada for Capricorn. It is Capricorn's Pada and Capricorn's sign. It's very, very powerful. And so what we are experiencing worldwide is a complete transformation, or perhaps even a breakdown, of the orders which existed before the pandemic. What's the good news? Well, it's not going to be like this forever. And all of these things are happening ultimately to restructure our world to be a better place that more fits what the human beings need. Eventually, when Jupiter enters Pisces, I believe the world will be much, much better than it was. And right now, we just still have to hunker down and deal with the, hopefully, last great surge of the pandemic. One last thing to talk about is the Aruda Lagna for this chart, which is actually in Virgo. What is Virgo? Virgo is all about details, and it is all about focusing on one's health, as well as service, to be honest, service to others. So for people who are in the service industry, who are in healthcare, and who are trying to make the world a better place, you will be served in this time. You will benefit. And even if it doesn't feel like an immediate benefit now, you will come out of this better than those who are impulsive, those who are frustrated and let their emotions get the better of them, those who take every minor conflict and blow it out of proportion, those who leave the house when they shouldn't, those who travel when they shouldn't. So just take that in mind, and thank you. This has been Dina Astrology. Have a great day.